My name is Jeff St Laurent. This is the live Tuesday call, and I had a great conversation with the people that called in around the topic today, and that's allowing ourselves to, get through the fear and take action anyways. And I'm going to also go over a simple strategy that I've used over the years with things, and just give you some other thoughts around it as well, that can help you, get past that overwhelm, get past that frustration, get past just whatever we want to label as fear, whatever's holding you back from doing something in your business and taking that, consistent action. That's a big piece, because I've found that a few of my clients of recent, and even someone I spoke to yesterday who was potentially considering working with me, but they were in that spot where they were just paralyzed by fear. And it really spurred me on to bring this topic to the call. So I'm going to address that. But before I get going, I want to let you know that I do record all these calls, and they are in my university on my website, sellingcoaching.com. So do yourself a favor, check that out. I got a fantastic group of resources there for you. Additionally, right on the homepage of sellingcoaching.com, I have a great resource called the Ultimate Startup Guide for New Coaches. You can check that right up there. Just enter your name and email address. You'll receive that instantly. It's an audio and a PDF resource that will also put you on my email community, so you can stay in touch with me, know what I'm doing each and every week, show you some great content, and also you can start to observe what I do with email in order building and nurturing my community, which is a huge piece of your business if you want to go full-time as a coach. And then lastly, I'm available for one-on-one mentoring. That's my signature program in terms of really helping coaches one-on-one put everything together, super detailed, walking you through whatever I need to walk you through from start to finish of getting you up, creating your marketing system, figuring out who you're going after, who you help with what specifically, and then email community, so forth and so on. So if that's something that you need some help with or considering that, right on the Work With Me page at sellingcoaching.com, go to the bottom, fill that form out. I'll follow up with you, and we can create a relaxed conversation on where we can go from there. Without further ado, let's talk about the topic, and that is working through fear to take action anyways, no matter how big the fear is. And oftentimes, when I work with my one-on-one mentoring clients, I'll tell them very early on is, I'm a mentor coach, so I mentor people, and I also coach them as well when needed. But obviously, that's where a lot of mentoring comes in, because they need some of the specific pieces as they move their business forward. But inevitably, when we get time to, get out there or do something, and for a lot of people early on, it's writing their free resource, let's say for their website, that like I told you about my free my guide right on my homepage of sellingcoaching.com, the Ultimate Startup Guide, creating something like that for yourself to start building your email community. The fears start popping up there, and then especially when we start getting out there, and whether it's making a video or, networking, face-to-face, speaking engagements, any of that stuff, there's a lot of fears that come up along the way. And as I tell my mentoring clients, early on, is that, I'm less likely to coach you through those fears, because I ultimately know, having been there myself as well and worked with many people, is that when we have those fears, we can coach you through them and you can understand them really well, but it doesn't mean that the fears are going to go away. It doesn't mean you're going to take action on it. You're just going to understand them really well and maybe why they're happening. But very often the fears are still there, and you still got to work through them. And so when it gets to that spot, it's not like, we're just going to push you through it. But at the end of the day, if we're going to be successful in transition to a full-time coaching business, we've got to work through really on a daily basis. There are all types of apprehensions and fears, if you will, if I were to just categorize them like that come up. And so we've got to find a way to learn how to manage that. And that's really where my lesson is going to go today is, each person's going to be very different in terms of their mechanisms on how they manage, if you will, that stress that's happening. That fear is a form of stress, and it's how do we manage that when it happens? What is our solution? So no matter what I share today, whether it's something that's new and fresh, maybe it's something that you've heard a million times before, because at the end of the day, what's really new around the situation of working through this, right? I will share my strategy that's worked for me, but the point is that no matter what it is that you hear, you've got to then take that and come up with what is your strategy. Like, I have my strategies, but you've got to figure out what works for you, and it might be a trial and error, but at the end of the day, you've got to find a strategy that works for you, so when it comes up, it's a go-to strategy, and that it works. Or maybe you've got a few of them that you've developed over the years based on situations that works. And so every time this happens, and especially when you're starting off with your business in the first 3, 4, or 5 years or so, there's going to be a lot of new things that come up. I mean, there are things that come up in my business still that feel new to me sometimes, where I'm like, ooh, how do I navigate this? Fortunately, I've navigated enough things in the past where, it might be a new circumstance, but it's very similar to what I've experienced before. And I get to pull off of, let's say, experiences that I've had. And obviously, the more you do the things, the more you send your emails out, the more you coach people, the more you ask for money, the more you handle those situations that start, create videos, speak, so forth and so on, the big things that tend to provoke these fear-based emotions. The more you do those, the more prepared you are, the more experience you get. Obviously, I wouldn't say that fear would necessarily go away. When I do speaking engagements, I still freak out in a way, but I found that to be a healthy thing, and I learned how to thrive off of that and use that as fuel to fuel me forward versus to hold me back, And as I was talking to some of the people, who called in today, a lot of the things are just so, you can, as you listen to this, relate to some of these things. There's these fear of just being judged and being judged negatively, and what we have isn't good enough. Our message isn't good enough. Or maybe what we're doing isn't good enough. Like, let's say as a service, as a coach, or maybe you're launching a program. Maybe it's something simple, like I said, sending an email to your audience and go, oh my God, this is no good. Who's going to read this? Why is anyone going to read this? Those are the things that we tend to overthink. We tend to get paralyzed in the thought and allow those things to start to hold us back. Maybe that we're not good enough. Maybe that I'm not the expert, or I'm not going to come across as professional. Oftentimes we can compare ourselves to other people. We see what else is out there. We can see what other people are doing. And, they're role models of ours. They're mentors of ours. They're people that we respect. They're people that we like what they do. So we're looking through those lenses, and it's almost like, they can't go wrong. They'll send an email and like, oh my God, this is such a great email. Or they'll put a course out, or they'll do an event, or you'll watch a video of theirs, and it's amazing. And you think they're amazing. And we often compare to that, and then we look at ourselves and go, oh my God, I can't do that. Oftentimes when I have a program called Live Sales Conversations, it's at livesalesconversations.com, where I help coaches convert their leads into paying clients. And it's a video-based group that we have every Wednesday, 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. And we're on the video call often, and I help people understand how they can navigate their leads, navigate those sales conversations, and not only help them with the actual responses, but what to happen from there, so we can get clients that way, so they can learn to do that more consistently. And inevitably, as they hear me, working through the conversations, or they'll show me a conversation that they're having with somebody, and they're like, "Help! I don't know what to do." And as I kind of help them with their responses and stuff like that, and inevitably I'll get, "Oh my God, you're so good at this," or I love you. It seems like you do it so effortlessly, or so easily. And it's like, yeah, but I've been doing it since 2004, right? So these people that you see that are doing these things so effortlessly, or they get up on front of camera or a live event, and they're the quote natural speaker, they're a natural whatever. It doesn't mean that they're the natural piece. That's all natural to them. Like, they worked at that. Like, all the stuff that I've done is like, I've worked at this stuff over many, many years. And this goes back to what I've done in the fitness industry, and what presenting and teaching group fitness classes, on different levels all around the world, but that was never easy for me. It was hard, and I freaked out, but I was working on that craft, and it was forcing myself to do those things when I had, if you will, those feels where I was overwhelmed. So let's get into some of these strategies, because we talked enough about, like, oh my God, the feelings enough of being overwhelmed, etc., and why the things that hold us back. But when we start to think about some of these things, the first thing I'll say is that you've got to determine whether it's real or not. Even talking to some of the people beforehand, there are some, when I say real or not, like the fear, is it real or not? Meaning, sometimes when we talk about this fear, if you will, that's holding us back, and we talk it through out loud, and we work it through, or if we were to work it through with somebody else, like a coach or someone like that, and we're saying it out loud, we can kind of laugh at ourselves and go like, wait a minute, this isn't true. What do you mean? Like someone said earlier, like, oh, it's like, I have this thing about being the expert, and it's like, oh, I'm not the expert, whatever. And then as we say it out loud, it's like, wait a minute, of course I'm the expert. It's like, I've lived this my whole life, or this is my passion. Or next thing you know, if I ask you to talk about the topic, and every time I do it with my mentoring clients, I'm like, well, tell me a little bit more about what you're doing. And they'll just go off. And I'm like, okay, yeah, you're not the expert, duh. I mean, that all they do is like they ooze with passion about it and expertise, right? So that's like, it's not real. Meaning those is what is what am I telling myself? Is it real or not real? And so when you talk it through, you can start to understand like, all right, no, this isn't real right now, right? So if you get to that spot, that's a great thing is because when you talk it out loud and realize like, no, this is just something I'm telling myself. You know, the old acronym for fear, false evidence appearing real, or whatever else you've heard for that an acronym, right? But at the end of the day, if it really is false evidence, if it's just, you know, your brain playing tricks on you and it's not the case, then talk yourself through it. I mean, it's a very simple strategy, but it's effective, because if you could talk yourself through it and get to the spot where you realize it's like, yeah, this is not really a thing I'm afraid of. It's just something I'm telling myself. Okay, we'll then start to move forward. If you then start to move forward after you talk yourself through this, maybe there's something else going on. And that's where you can start to identify that as well and talk it through whether it's real or not. There are some things that may be real. And when I say maybe real, maybe you're not that good. Maybe you're not the expert. Maybe you don't come across as professional. You know, we have these worst fears, if you will, of being judged negatively or coming across, you know, invalid or ignorant or whatever, you know, the fears that you might have with that. And you know what? Maybe it's true. In other words, maybe you do have to get better. You know, I've seen videos, I've worked with some people, and it's like, yeah, they've got some good stuff, but in order to really get out there, they've got to work on their craft. You know, maybe you are uncomfortable speaking in public. Maybe you are uncomfortable on video. Maybe you're not a great writer. You know, maybe you can't express your thoughts clearly to communicate what you're trying to communicate. I've watched many different videos and read many different things, and sometimes it's just not good. And so with that being said, that could be a real thing. And if it's a fear of yours with that, because I would think the worst thing, and I know that's happened to me before, is my worst thing is that, like, oh, I do something and it's not good, you know, or I'm doing something with a client and they're not benefiting from what I do, you know. And it's though, but what I'm going to with that is that we've got to be willing to face the reality of it and face the real feedback. And I'll say this just like the fears being real or not real. You know, there's real feedback and then there's not real feedback. You know, real feedback is if, you know, let's say a client is telling you they're unhappy with what they're doing. Well, then find out a little bit further and find out what's going on, you know, and find out, is it really what you're doing with them, or is it something that they're going through, right? But if a client gives you some feedback, like I remember one time a client of mine, you know, they had emailed me like on a Friday afternoon, and I'd gone out of the office. I didn't get back to them until like late Monday afternoon. And then they wrote me, they're like, hey, listen, you know, I'm really serious about my business, and I just want to make sure that you're on top of these responses and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh my God, yes. You know, and I purposely didn't respond through the weekend because I was taking the weekend off, and I try and stay away from email, you know, if I can. And, you know, and so we had a conversation about it, but at the same time, it was impactful for me because I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't ever want to come across as non-responsive to somebody. So it really, that feedback for me stepped my game up a little bit. You know, I had to be willing to say, I'm like, well, according to this person, I wasn't being a good mentor coach. You know, and I've had some things over the course of the 2004, since coaching full-time since 2004. God, I've gone probably close to 7,000 hours of coaching at this point. But what it is over the course of time, I've had some feedback where some people haven't been happy with some things I've done with them. But those have been the best things because those things have allowed me to really look at what I was doing, or maybe what I wasn't doing, or maybe what I slacked off on in some cases, or maybe I was just so busy with things, I just couldn't handle the load of what I was doing. But it allowed me to look at those things and go, oh my gosh, either, okay, yeah, this definitely is something that they're going through, but let me work through it with them. Or this is definitely something I need to step up on and improve my game. So maybe you do put a video out there and it doesn't get a great response. Maybe you do put an email out there and it's poorly written, you know, but we've got to be willing to face that. And the only way we're actually going to face that is by getting our stuff out there. And so that's the strategy behind it, if you will, or maybe said differently, it's a mindset behind it that I've had, is that I got to be willing to put something out there in its rawest form, meaning that everything's got to have some sort of a deadline to get it out there. Otherwise, it will never get out there. But my mindset is like, I've got to get it out there to get the response. And what I want to do is I have a thirst and I have a need to get better. And the reason I have a fierce desire to get better is because what I've started to understand about entrepreneurship, and I've shared this in different things that I've done in my teachings over time, is that as an entrepreneur, we get paid for the value we bring to the market. And so with a job or an employee, you get paid what the job's worth. It doesn't matter how much you upskill yourself and how good and valuable you are and how much personal development, non-specific or non-specific to the job that you do, you're going to get paid what the job's worth. And you get whatever percent raise per year based on whatever, that's what you get. It doesn't really matter how good you are necessarily. Whereas entrepreneur, you get paid for the value that you bring. So we've got to work on ourselves. We've got to work on our skill sets. We've got to work on our crafts. Tuesday, a call I did last week about beating the odds to transition to full-time. I talked more about those skill sets. So check that out in my Selling Coaching University at sellingcoaching.com. That's where we actually get to work on ourselves. So we get stronger with those skill sets. So we bring a more valuable service, us. We bring a more valuable person to the table, so we're more fluent, we're more expressive, we're able to communicate better, we're able to listen better, we're able to sell better because we understand the art of selling and the skill set of selling. We don't shy away from the sales conversation and asking for money and following up with people and doing all those things that allow us to get to the place where we can get paid for it, right? So it's that thirst to get better. But the only way we get better is by putting out some stuff. And maybe there's some stuff that you put out that isn't good. But welcome that. Welcome the critic, if you will, that says, hey, whatever, this isn't good, or you spelt a word wrong, or whatever. My mom says that all the time. I know when I send an email out, if I don't get an email from my mom, then I must have spelled everything correctly and probably said everything grammatically correctly. Otherwise, I'd get an email from her, gently saying, hey, honey, hope you don't mind me saying this, but you spelt this wrong, or you used the word weather wrong. And, and that's helpful. And I breathe that on. And, over the time is what I found is I don't allow those things to bother me. However, because I know that it's inevitable that I'm going to spell words wrong. It's inevitable that something I say isn't going to make any sense. However, I got to the point where I realized that that's okay. But if it keeps happening, then I've got to take a look at it. So great if it happens once or twice every now and then. But if it's continually happening, then that's a time to say, like, okay, maybe I'm not good at this. Maybe I need to have someone proofread this before I send it out. Maybe I need to come up with another strategy. Maybe I need to, give it a read one more time before I do this. So the other piece that I've worked on over the years is trusting myself. And when I say trusting myself is I know myself and what the quality of the work that I will put out there. There's a certain threshold that I have just because I've known myself for 42 years now, right? And there's a certain threshold of quality, if you will, or thoughtfulness and attention to detail, etc., that I don't ever go below when I put something out there, even if it's an email or whatever it is. Like there's a certain threshold. And what I've learned over the years, and even this is before even my business. This is even just like when I was landscaping or when I was a personal trainer or even when I was a kid in terms of when I played with my toys or how I put my toys away, right? So that there's a certain quality or level of, if you will, of OCD-ness that I have with my stuff. And some people could call it perfection. You could label yourself in certain ways, but there's a certain level that you go to when you put things out. In other words, if it's not at or above that level, you're going to continually work on it till you get it at or above that level. So you've got to get yourself to a level of trust that, or honor that trust, even before you're even in this new area of coaching, especially if you're starting off and you don't have that experience or, have put stuff out there before. You've got to get to that point of trusting that, okay, this is the type of person that I am. I'm never not going to show up. I'm never not going to put out something that's good. I'm never not going to put something out intentionally knowing there's a spelling error or whatever, not making sense. So there's always it might happen, but you've got to trust that you're not going to be that person that does that. And again, if it keeps happening and you're not that person, well, that's just a sign. You know what? I've got to get better. I've got to put some systems in place or some people in place to help me with this, so it doesn't keep happening that frequently. But there's that level of trust, and this level of trust is a big thing I'm sharing right now. Is you've got to be able to go back to and say, okay, what have I done in the past? And what type of work have I done? And I'm going to trust the fact that, you know what, when I put this out now, I'm not going to let anything go out knowing it's not going to be at a professional level or what I would deem professional. When we get to that level of trust and we ask yourself those questions, maybe you don't trust yourself, right? Sometimes I'll work with a client and I'll say, if you've got a deadline, and I'll get into this in a second, is if you had deadlines with other people, etc., do you ever miss a deadline with somebody? And I know for myself, like if I promise somebody something and it's gonna by a certain date or time, I'm gonna get it done, and I don't care what I have to do last minute to get it done. I will get it done, and I will get it done right. I will never miss that deadline. But there are some people that no, I miss deadlines all the time, or I'll make up an excuse, or some people will do that stuff. So you have to know yourself. This is like the raw honesty of yourself to say, you've got to know yourself. If you're a person that's gonna rationalize, make excuses with somebody or things like that, then maybe that's not something that's going to drive you and keep you accountable, so to speak. Maybe that accountability from somebody else won't help you at all. So you've got to take a look at what are the things that I can trust with myself and what are the things that I can't trust. And if you can't trust, again, you've got to be honest with yourself. So you've got to find another way to go about doing that. Since entrepreneurship, we don't have a boss, so to speak, or said differently, we are our boss. I like to say our schedule's our boss, and utilize that, and that dictates where we go and what we do next. When I hang the phone up, after the Tuesday call, if I don't have a client, well, what am I going to do? If I don't have anything written down, I can just wander very easily, but I've got some things bullet pointed afterwards, so as soon as I hang up, I know exactly what's required of me before the end of my day, so I can get out of my office at least by my office hours or sooner, because I can do that, but I've got to get this work done first. And so my schedule becomes my boss. Another strategy I like to use that I'll share with you is whenever possible, I like to use other people as a form of accountability, because I know, again, about myself is that if I have a deadline with someone, I will never let that deadline go by and miss out on doing it. Unless there's a really valid reason, like, oh my God, I just broke my leg and I can't do this, or an emergency came up. But again, that's not an excuse or me, pretending to to cover up for my own inadequacies, or just I wasn't motivated or disciplined enough to do it. It would be a legitimate thing. When in that case, I would let them know and figure things out from there. But what I like to do is, as a simple strategy, is if there's something I need to do for a client or anything for that involves another person, I always ask them, when is the latest you need this by? And I want to get a specific day and time. And if they're like, oh, no, it doesn't matter. And I'm like, no, I need to know a specific day and time, like the latest you need it by. And so they'll give me a specific date and time, and then I put it in my calendar, and then I go to that week or that day, and based on whatever amount of time I need to do that, I put it in my calendar, I block up that time to do that, and then I forget about it. Because what I understand about myself is I thrive in the last minute. I thrive in the crunch time. If there's a week or 2 weeks to do something, I am useless. I cannot get it done. Call it my ADD, call it whatever it is, doesn't matter, is the fact that I can't get things done ahead of time. And so this is the part of when I'm saying, I'm sharing you my strategy, but ultimately I want you to take these things and start to know yourself and honor those things. So in other words, I can't get things done ahead of time, so I've got to wait until that last minute when the stimulus is high enough and the pressure is big enough. That's when I can focus and I can get an amazing amount of things done in a small amount of time. And so what I've learned to do over the years is I've learned to leverage that. And so now, instead of worrying about it and stressing about it for the next 2 weeks and ultimately waiting to the last minute to get it done anyways, as I find out whenever possible, when is the latest I can get something to somebody, and then I look at, okay, how much time do I really think I need with this, and then I block it off of my calendar. And the great part is that now it's done, and this is where I go back to that schedule as the boss piece, is because if it's in my calendar, I do it. And also, as we get closer to that time, let's say it's next Friday, for an example, and I need 2 hours to get whatever done for whatever. And I block off 2 hours in my calendar. But now when I'm booking clients and I'm booking other things, that time's already taken. So I don't accidentally, block off that time for something else. And as far as I'm concerned, is when it's in my calendar, it has a home, and then it's only a matter of time before it gets done. Whereas the difference is if it's off to the side on a Post-it note or anywhere besides given a time in my calendar, like a to-do type of thing, if it's not in my calendar, it's not done. But once it's in my calendar, it's as good as done. Whether it's business stuff, doing something with my son, my girlfriend, going to work out, anything for that matter. If it's not in my calendar, it's not done, and it's most likely not gonna get done because something else will always come in the way. So those are some strategies that I have in order to, get things done and leverage what I trust and what I know about myself and how I work in those situations. If you don't have any accountability for other people, which is very often the case, I've got to do my website, or I've got to make this phone call to somebody, or there's just other things in your business that you've got to do. Sometimes a coach or a mentor coach like myself can have that accountability, but often what I found is sometimes that's not enough for people. Meaning, yes, you pay a coach or you hire someone that you're paying, a mentor coach like myself, like I said, but also sometimes it's not enough because the reality is as like when I'm a mentor coach to somebody, I'm not going to get pissed at someone for not doing something. Like, you didn't do it, you're an idiot. Like, what am I going to do, right? I mean, I can hold them accountable. I can ask them about it. I can help them work through something or answer questions, obviously, which is hopefully going to increase the likelihood of doing it. They're just the nature of not wanting to maybe disappoint your mentor coach like myself, right? And not disappoint that person, or, wanting to show up at the next session, having things done. So if those things are good for you, then that accountability, that leverage might work. But at the end of the day, that person's not going to force you. I'm not going to force you to do it because there's stuff that gets in the way. But with that being said, obviously, I want to push you the best I can. So you got to find out, in situations like that, maybe that will work for you, maybe it won't. But there's something I want to kind of start to wrap up with is the leverage, and finding leverage in your business and to allow you to get things done. And this allows you to push through those fears no matter what they are or how big they are. So I'll give a quick example, and we can go from there. Is, back in 2008, I was writing my first book, and I published it in 2009. And I knew that I would have what they would what they would call writer's block, or I would have times where I just had no idea what to do, or I would have times where I would give up. I wanted the book for January 1st, 2009. There was a big event that I was going to go to, I think, that week, and I wanted to have the book for that event. And I knew it would be great exposure, get some jumpstart on book sales, get some clients. And I decided to write the book. It was in August of 2008. And so with that being said, I had a pretty small time frame because I had to get the manuscript to the editor. I believe it was no later than September 1st. In order for them to edit and blah, 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 get it back to me and then go to print and then ship and have it in my hands, right? So I had a small time frame. And then so when I went home, I started writing, and, a month later, actually I think October 1st was the deadline. So I think almost 3 weeks or 4 weeks later, come close to September, I had gotten nowhere. I got a lot written, but it was going nowhere. And what I realized was, ahead of time, is I needed some leverage. So what I did was, when I signed up for the book, number one, the leverage was multifold with me. There was a $10,000 deposit I needed to do with the book, and it was a refundable deposit. I had them rewrite the contract, so it was a non-refundable deposit, because I knew that there was no way I would lose $10,000 because I couldn't figure out what to write, or because I had writer's block, or I just couldn't do this anymore, or didn't have the time. There's just no way I would lose that type of money. There was just no way. So it forced me to do it. And also within that contract was the deadline of getting the manuscript. And if I didn't get that deadline to them by that day, I would forfeit the $10,000. Now, I did this because I knew there was no way I wouldn't do that. So in this case, what am I leveraging? I'm leveraging financials, right? I'm leveraging that because I knew that was something that I was unwilling to lose, and it was a contract, and it was other people, it was a business, and I knew that they would follow through and charge me the $10,000. So that was my first bulletproof way of doing this. It was guaranteeing my success. Whereas if I didn't do that, it's like, well, no one really cared if I wrote the book or not, right? So I could always delay it another month. What's the big deal? Another way I did it was my mentor coach at the time. I respected this person tremendously, and I spoke with him, and I was going to have the book, and I told him I was going to write the book, and I told him I was going to have it for an event that he was doing. That was the event that he was doing in that first week of January, and he said I could speak at that book if I could speak at that event if I had my book. And so I committed to him saying I will have that book. So he put me on the roster, for the speaker lineup, and he was marketing it. So I also knew I leveraged my word and also my reputation, because I knew there was no way ever that I would let my reputation with him or the way he would view me or not have the book in time because, I couldn't write or I couldn't figure it out or have an excuse for that. So I really leveraged myself. Additionally, what I did was I shared that with my audience at the time. I also did a pre-sale for the book where people bought the book before it was actually written to get their copy ahead of time. So I had all kinds of leverage, in terms of my word, my reputation, financial responsibility to produce a product for people that they already purchased, my finances. So as you can see, those are things that I all leveraged and it guaranteed that I wrote that book and got it done on time. And I wrote an almost 400-page book, and it was I think it was like 5 weeks is what it was. But I got it done, and it was great, and it worked. So where I'm bringing this to you now is if you cannot get accountability through somebody, in the truest sense, like if it's something due or you're getting something to somebody, what I'm going to suggest for you is leverage something. And this is the strategy. And I'll wrap this up to say, when you leverage something, let's say it's financials as an example, or even something fun like, I'm going to shave my hair if I don't do something, right? Something like that. You have to do it with somebody that's going to actually follow through with what you're kind of leveraging. Or if you're leveraging your word or your reputation with somebody, it has to be big enough where if you weren't to do that, or if you weren't able to follow through with what you said you were going to do, that it would be very painful for you, or would actually ruin your reputation with that person. If you say, hey, I'm not going to do this. If I don't do this, I'm gonna write you a check for $200. And deep inside your heart, or you don't believe that person would actually charge you the $200. Or, if it happened and you were to give them the check and they were like, no, I'm not going to take it. If that's the case, guess what? It doesn't work. It's not true leverage. I've done this with clients over the years. I've done this with myself, even with my friend. I wanted to do calf races because I want to get stronger. I wasn't doing them. So I said I would do them every day. And if I didn't do them, I would text my friend, by the end of the day that either I did them or I didn't do them. And if I didn't so much as text the person, every day was $50. And I did it every single day. And the day that I didn't do it, by the end of the day, like the next morning, he's like, you owe me $50. And guess what? That weekend I wrote him a check and he cashed the check. And it was painful, right? And now it's something simple and it was $50. And it's like, oh yeah, could I go to bed and be like, I would go to bed and lie down sometimes and be like, oh my God, I didn't do my calf raises. And it would get me out of bed and do my calf raises and text them, even if it was like close to midnight. But again, it was the leverage and the accountability that I otherwise wouldn't have, because otherwise I could easily go to bed and be like, I didn't do my calf raises. Okay, no big deal. I'll do them tomorrow and then never get it done.